The growing body of evidence suggests that the timeline we've been taught may be far too narrow, and the true origins of human civilization may go back far further than we ever imagined. Graham Hancock, Fingerprints of the Gods, 1995. The mysteries of ancient history have been well established over the past century or so. One of the biggest, of course, is the Great Pyramid, located on the Giza Plateau in Egypt. Here began the history of architecture. Here people learned to measure time by a calendar, to plot the stars by astronomy, and to chart the Earth by geometry. And here they developed that most awesome of all ideas, the idea of eternity. The Great Pyramid of Giza is not merely a monument of grandeur, but an exhibition of technical ingenuity so advanced that it rivals modern engineering. In Histories, Book 2, 124 to 129, ancient Greek historian Herodotus, 5th century BCE, documents intriguing tales about the construction of the Great Pyramid, relaying stories from Egyptian priests. The Pyramid of Cheops, of which I speak, is a wonder surpassing all others. It is built of stone so vast and fitted with such precision that no man of my time could comprehend the means of its construction. The stones, which were hewn from the quarries of the Arabian mountains, were dragged across the Nile and assembled into this mighty edifice, rising in tiers to a height that defies belief. It was said that 100,000 men labored upon it at a time, and that its completion required the toil of decades. The polished casing stones shone like the sun itself, and within its heart, passages were carved with knowledge unknown to the common man. In the Pyramids and Temples of Gizeh, 1883, British Egyptologist Sir William Flinders Petrie, 1853–1942, revolutionized pyramid studies with precise measurements and groundbreaking analysis. The precision with which the massive stones were cut, transported, and set in place, some of them weighing upwards of 70 tons, demonstrates an architectural knowledge that is nothing short of extraordinary. The pyramid's base is nearly a perfect square, aligned almost exactly to the cardinal points of the compass, with an accuracy that modern surveyors find astonishing. The construction required a mathematical and astronomical understanding that implies a civilization of remarkable sophistication. During his Egyptian campaign in 1798, French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, 1769–1821, recorded his awe at the Great Pyramid, fueling European fascination with ancient Egypt. Soldiers, from the heights of these pyramids, 40 centuries look down upon you. These structures stand as eternal testaments to the genius of mankind, built with methods unknown to us and with a precision that we, with all our science, can scarcely replicate. The architects who raised these stones knew secrets we have yet to rediscover. In the Great Pyramid, why was it built and who built it? 1859, British theorist John Taylor introduced the controversial idea that the pyramid encoded mathematical and geodetic knowledge. The dimensions of the Great Pyramid contain within them a system of knowledge beyond what was thought possible for its time. The builders embedded within its proportions the very constants of nature, the value of pi, the golden ratio, and the dimensions of the Earth itself. The structure stands as a mathematical and engineering marvel, suggesting a wisdom that transcends mere burial practices. It is a monument to science as much as it is to the rulers who oversaw its construction. In The Complete Pyramids, 1997, American Egyptologist Mark Lehner provided one of the most comprehensive modern studies on pyramid construction and purpose. The Great Pyramid is one of the most extraordinary feats of human engineering. Every aspect of its design, from the carefully leveled foundation, which deviates by less than an inch over its vast base, to the internal passages constructed with impeccable precision, demonstrates a mastery of architecture and logistics that we still struggle to fully understand. The logistics of quarrying, transporting, and assembling over 2.3 million limestone blocks, some weighing as much as 80 tons, required a labor force of thousands and an organizational capacity that set the foundations for future civilizations. After examining the Great Pyramid's dimensions, physicist and mathematician Sir Isaac Newton, 1643–1727, sought to refine his calculations of Earth's measurements, believing it held key mathematical ratios. In studying the Great Pyramid, one finds that its dimensions relate harmoniously to those of the Earth itself. The length of its base divided by its height produces the mathematical constant pi, while its internal proportions align with geodetic measures of our planet. Whether by intent or coincidence, the builders embedded within this structure a knowledge that suggests a far greater understanding of the natural world than previously credited to the ancients. In the Giza power plant, 1998, engineer and author Christopher Dunn proposed a radical theory that the Great Pyramid was an ancient machine rather than a tomb. The precision engineering evident in the Great Pyramid is unparalleled in the ancient world. The cutting and placement of its granite blocks, particularly those in the king's chamber, required tools and techniques beyond what conventional archaeology attributes to the ancient Egyptians. The internal symmetry, precision drilling, and alignment of its passageways suggest a technological sophistication that exceeds anything expected of a civilization from 2500 BCE. It is possible that the pyramid was not just a tomb, but an advanced machine with a yet undiscovered function. In Fingerprints of the Gods, 1995, journalist and theorist Graham Hancock speculated that the Great Pyramid preserved knowledge from a lost advanced civilization. The Great Pyramid is far more than a pharaonic tomb. It is a cosmic machine, perfectly aligned with celestial bodies, embodying a mathematical and geodetic knowledge that should not have been available at the time of its construction. Its base perimeter divided by twice its height yields an approximation of pi. Its internal angles and passages seem to encode precise astronomical knowledge, indicating that its builders understood precession and other cosmic cycles. The pyramid is not merely an Egyptian monument, but a legacy of a lost civilization. In Our Inheritance in the Great Pyramid, 1864, astronomer Charles Piazzi Smythe popularized the idea that the pyramid encoded divine and cosmic knowledge. The Great Pyramid is a structure whose dimensions hold within them the fundamental measures of our planet and cosmos. The length of the pyramid's sides is proportional to the Earth's circumference, while the height correlates with the polar radius. The builders encoded within its stone a system of universal proportions, a knowledge that defies explanation within the conventional timeline of human development. It is a legacy left to us by a civilization with an understanding far beyond what was previously believed possible. In Pyramid, 1975, architect and author David Macaulay illustrated the architectural ingenuity behind pyramid construction, making it accessible to a wide audience. The construction of the Great Pyramid was not just an incredible architectural feat, but a demonstration of ancient ingenuity, organization, and perseverance. It represents the combined effort of an entire society, with thousands of workers contributing to an edifice so precise that it still stands as the most perfectly aligned structure in the world. Its builders mastered the challenges of quarrying, transport, and assembly on an unprecedented scale, creating a monument that continues to inspire awe and admiration thousands of years later. In his book, The Great Pyramid of Giza, A Modern View on Ancient Knowledge, Willem Witteveen explores the mathematical relationships embodied in the pyramid's design. The golden ratio, as well as the Great Pyramid as an expression of it, is an important key to our universe containing the Earth and the Moon. The ratio between the Earth and the Moon is, in fact, the basis for the mathematical concept of squaring the circle. As for its age, there is a tradition that declares the Great Pyramid was there for many centuries before Khufu. In the pyramids and temples of Gizeh, Sir William Flinders Petrie raised doubts about the true ownership of the Great Pyramid. No indisputable evidence exists that Khufu was the original builder of the Great Pyramid, only later records stating that it was his. Inscriptions found in the so-called relieving chambers may be later graffiti rather than true builders' marks. Additionally, the engineering precision of the structure suggests a sophistication that surpasses what is otherwise documented from his reign. The question must, therefore, remain open as to whether Khufu built, modified, or merely usurped the structure. In Histories, Book 2, 124 to 129, Herodotus questioned whether Pharaoh Khufu was truly responsible for the Great Pyramid's construction. The Egyptians detested the memory of Cheops, Khufu, so much that they were unwilling to speak his name. They affirm that during his reign, all the temples were closed, and the people were made to labor in misery. His pyramid, they say, was built using forced labor, and yet they claim it stood long before his time, only that he repaired it and placed his name upon it, as many kings have done before. In Egyptiaca, Manetho presented alternative accounts of Egypt's rulers, adding to the mystery surrounding the Great Pyramid. It was said among the ancient priests that the Great Pyramid was not the work of Cheops, but belonged to a time long before him. The sacred texts, now lost, spoke of a previous age of gods and demigods who walked among men, and that the great monuments were built under their guidance. Cheops only repurposed what was already there, erasing the true names of the builders. In Pyramidographia, 1646, John Greaves examined the pyramid's dimensions and speculated about its origins. The Copts of Egypt have long maintained that the Great Pyramid existed long before the reign of Cheops, and that he was not its original builder, but rather its restorer. These traditions, if they hold any truth, suggest that the structure may date to an earlier, forgotten epoch, raising questions about the true antiquity of Egyptian civilization. In Al-Khitat, 15th-century Egyptian historian Abdullah al-Makrizi referenced different traditions that challenge the mainstream narrative of the Great Pyramid's builders. The sages of Egypt declare that the Great Pyramid was raised by the ancients before the flood to preserve knowledge and records of their wisdom. It was later defaced and altered by various rulers, who inscribed their names upon it to claim its grandeur. The Egyptians who preserved these traditions insisted that the pyramid had already stood for ages when the kings of the 4th dynasty reigned. 20th-century clairvoyant and theorist Edgar Cayce controversially suggested that the Great Pyramid was built by an advanced pre-Egyptian civilization. The pyramids were constructed not in the time of Cheops, but rather in the period known as Zep-Tepi, the first time, when the gods walked with men. These structures were part of an Atlantean influence upon Egypt, meant to be a record and an initiation chamber for those seeking higher knowledge. Later rulers merely repurposed them, altering and claiming the work of a civilization lost to history. In Sacred Science, R.A.A. Schwaller de Lubitsch proposed that the pyramid's construction reflected lost ancient knowledge and wisdom. If we analyze the proportions, geometry, and astronomical alignments of the Great Pyramid, we find a level of sophistication that is out of step with the conventional dating of its construction. It appears to encode knowledge of precessional cycles, cosmic laws, and sacred harmonics that may originate from a civilization much older than dynastic Egypt. The tradition that Khufu only restored it is not without merit when considering these anomalies. Jewish Roman historian Josephus, 1st century CE, also questioned who built this edifice in Antiquities of the Jews. Our fathers, fearing a great deluge, built 2 great monuments in which they inscribed all their knowledge, one of brick and one of stone, so that if one perished, the other might remain. Some say these were the pyramids of Egypt, which held the wisdom of the ancients long before the pharaohs. Church historians and other sources also preserved alternative accounts of who built the Great Pyramid. In Chronicon, Eusebius of Caesarea, circa 260 to 339 CE, recorded alternative historical traditions that questioned official accounts of the Great Pyramid. The Egyptian priests declare that their wisdom was preserved within the sacred monuments, long before the flood, by those whom they call the first men, who walked with the gods. These wise men, foreseeing the great destruction that would come upon the earth by water and fire, set about inscribing the sacred sciences upon enduring stone within great pyramids and temples. The knowledge of the stars, the laws of measure, and the divine precepts were thus hidden from destruction. Citing Manetho's The Book of Sothis, Byzantine monk George Syncellus preserved conflicting narratives about Egypt's ancient past. Before the Great Flood, the Egyptian sages, knowing the coming destruction, erected the pyramids as repositories of knowledge and sacred texts. This was done under the rule of Saurid, who reigned 300 years before the deluge. He received visions of fire falling from the sky and a great flood covering the earth. To safeguard their wisdom, the priests inscribed the mysteries of the heavens and the earth upon the interior of the pyramids, using hieroglyphs of great complexity. When later kings ruled, they found these structures already standing, their true builders lost to time. In Chronographiae, Christian chronographer Julius Africanus, circa 160 to 240 CE, examined Egypt's timeline, challenging conventional interpretations of its monuments. The wise men of Egypt, forewarned by their astronomers, constructed vast pyramids in which they placed records of all that was known in their age. These edifices, imperishable to time, were built to preserve the ancient sciences through the calamities that would soon befall the world. And thus, though much was lost to the flood, the wisdom of the ancients remained, hidden within the stone halls of these structures. Into Autolycus, Theophilus of Antioch, circa 120 to 183 CE, referenced ancient structures like the pyramids in the context of biblical history. The monuments of Egypt bear testimony to a time before the deluge, for the pyramids were not built as tombs, but as houses of knowledge, preserving the wisdom of those who came before. The priests of Egypt, inheriting the traditions of their ancestors, spoke of a great fire that would consume the earth and of a flood that would wash away all men. To prepare, they engraved the sciences upon the inner chambers of their great buildings, that those who would come after might learn anew what was once known. In Christian topography, Byzantine monk Cosmas Indicopleustes, 6th century CE, speculated about Egypt's monuments within a theological framework. The great pyramids of Egypt were not built by the pharaohs of recent memory, but by a people long before them, who desired to inscribe within stone the knowledge of their times. These men, wise in astronomy and geometry, understood the motions of the heavens and sought to preserve this understanding from the destruction they saw was to come upon the world. When later rulers came upon these monuments, they knew not their true builders, and so falsely ascribed them to the kings of their own time. In Chronicon Ecclesiasticum, Syriac Christian historian Bar Hebraeus, 1226 to 1286 CE, documented alternative histories of Egypt's great structures. Among the Egyptians, there is a story that tells of a time before the flood, when the wise men of old foresaw a great destruction to come. They, desiring to preserve their knowledge, erected mighty structures of stone into which they placed the writings of all their sciences, the knowledge of the heavens, the motions of the stars, the principles of mathematics and measure. These were the pyramids, which stood as witnesses to the wisdom of a lost age. In Historiarum Compendium, Byzantine historian Cedrenus, 11th century CE, preserved accounts that diverged from mainstream Egyptian history. The Egyptians themselves recount that the Great Pyramids were constructed long before the reigns of their famous kings, being built by wise men who, foreseeing calamity, desired to preserve knowledge for future generations. They recorded their arts and sciences upon tablets of stone, hidden within the mighty structures they raised, so that when the waters receded and men returned to the land, they might find them and learn once more. But later rulers, knowing not their origin, placed their names upon them, claiming what was not theirs. In Chronicle of John of Nikiu, Egyptian Coptic bishop and historian John of Nikiu, 7th century CE, explored various interpretations of Egypt's past, including the pyramids. The ancients, who were skilled in wisdom beyond measure, built the great pyramids of Egypt not as sepulchres, but as vessels of knowledge, that the world might not be left in ignorance when calamity struck. These structures, sealed and secured, were designed to endure the ravages of time, that the wisdom of the past might not perish from the earth. And though later generations knew not their purpose, the pyramids remained as silent witnesses to the knowledge they contained. In History of the Franks, Frankish bishop and historian Gregory of Tours, 6th century CE, referenced the wonders of Egypt, raising questions about their origins. The pyramids of Egypt are unlike the tombs of kings, for they bear no mark of decay nor the signs of common burial. Instead, it is said by some that they were constructed in a time long past, by men who sought to guard the secrets of their wisdom against the coming of a great destruction. The knowledge of the stars, the nature of the earth, and the arts of measure were inscribed within, that they might not be lost when fire and water consumed the world. In Etymologiae, Spanish bishop and scholar Saint Isidore of Seville, 560 to 636 CE, compiled knowledge of ancient civilizations, including speculation on Egypt's monuments. Among the wonders of Egypt, the pyramids stand foremost, said to be built by the sages of old to preserve knowledge from destruction. They were not raised as mere memorials of kings, but as repositories of wisdom, hidden away from the corruption of time. Their halls contained writings of all the sciences known to man, so that if disaster struck, those who came after might learn anew. Such is the legacy of the wise men of Egypt, who feared not only the end of their lives, but the loss of their knowledge. During our investigation of the Great Pyramid, we discovered literally hundreds of accounts that diverge from mainstream opinions. These were just a few of them. Our next upload will feature more rare texts on the Giza pyramids. Stay tuned, and as always, thanks for watching.